Hello chess friends and welcome to your Art of Chess channel and welcome back to our Queen's Gambit decline studies. So in these studies we have seen some great openings and great defenses after the first moves d4, d5 and c4, and today we're continuing with our Queen's Gambit decline studies and the so-called Janowski Variation. And the Janowski Variation we have started yesterday. We have seen a beautiful gameplay by the world champion Magnus in the Janowski Variation of the Queen's Gambit decline, where he really destroyed with the black pieces his arch enemy Hikaru Nakamura, really with some beautiful tactical shots. And today we're doing a different thing. Today I wanted to show you actually how Magnus Carlsen is playing against the Janowski Variation, because really the Janowski is one of Magnus Carlsen's favorite lines, but how he's playing against his own opening sort of, I wanted to show you now in this particular video. And I wanted to show you first of all a beautiful game where Magnus really destroyed the Shak and Mamedjadov with the white pieces against the Janowski Variation, but then I wanted to also show you how he should play actually against this wild Magnus Carlsen idea, because Magnus produces really cool ideas in the opening stage, and I'm a little bit sad that no opening will probably be called after Magnus Carlsen. I would really love to maybe watch at least a line that's named after Magnus Carlsen. So maybe it could be, I don't know, the Queen's Gambit decline, the Janowski Variation, and Magnus Carlsen's positional line or something. So I think Magnus Carlsen deserves in his career to at least have sort of an opening line name for himself. So let's see now again what is the Queen's Gambit decline, what is now the new idea in the Janowski Variation here produced by the world champion Magnus Carlsen. So the first move is of course the move d4. We have now the move d5, and now after move c4 we have now the Queen's Gambit decline with the move e6, and now after move knight to c3 we have reached now the Janowski variation with the move a6. So I've been asked now also the question, what happens if white plays now the move knight to f3? If white goes with knight to f3, don't go anymore into the Janowski Variation, because I think you could face a very brutal line of the Catalan with the move g3, bishop to g2. In my opinion, if you face the move knight to f3, go just into classical systems with knight to f6, and now after move knight to c3 you can go maybe into the Vienna Variation with d takes c4, or you could go into the Ragozin defense with the move bishop to b4. Nothing wrong with both of these openings, and we have covered already the Vienna but also the Ragozin defense in our Queen's Gambit decline study. So maybe there's something for you if you're bothered, if you're troubled with the move knight to f3 instead of knight to c3. So as I said, after move knight to c3, that's the only possibility when we have the move a6 as the Janowski Variation. If knight to f3 happens, then it's not anymore the Janowski Variation. So after move a6 we are facing again this move c takes d5, e takes d5, and now comes the most popular and the main line of the Janowski with the move bishop to f4. And we are following now first of all a beautiful game played by Magnus Carlsen against Shakri Mamedjadov. Shakri Mamedjadov is playing now here with the black pieces, and he continued with this normal knight to f6 move. As we said, when the bishop gets out, we're getting then the knights out. If of course white delays the situation with the bishop, then we are not going with the move knight to f6. The idea we have talked about yesterday in our previous video of the Janowski Variation. If knight to f3 happens, don't play knight to f6, because you get pinned by bishop to g5. Now you just delay the knight's move and you're playing the move c6. When bishop to f4 happens, now we play knight to f6. So in the game by Magnus Carlsen against Mamedjadov, Magnus played now the move bishop to f4, and please watch both of these videos, the video yesterday and also this video combined, because probably we will not talk about other ideas in this particular video that may be bothering you. Now after move bishop to f4, as we said, now we play the move knight to f6. After move e3, here we have this traditional line with the move bishop to d6. We're trying to get the bishops off the board and going into equal middle game stage. If bishop to d6 happens, then we have queen to d6, kingside castling, rook to e8, and then we have a further control of the e4 square. The idea we have also discussed in our yesterday's video. So here after move bishop to d6, Magnus comes up now with the wild idea. He plays now sort of a breaking principle move here. He plays now the move bishop to g5. He plays the second time with the same piece in the opening stage, which is something that I would not recommend you in many occasions. There is the rule in chess that says you should not play in the opening stage with the same piece twice, but now Magnus kind of breaks this rule by playing the move bishop to g5, creates now the still annoying pin against the knight on f6, and is of course threatening to pick up the pawn on d5. And there are not many things that you can do. In my opinion, honest opinion, the best line is here to go with the move c6. And you see now the move c6 produces the normal idea to go b5, knight to d7, knight to b6, and knight to c4. That's the idea of this opening line. But let's see now what happens after move bishop to e6 that Shakir Mamedjarov played here. And this is something that I would not recommend you here to do, because there is a huge tactical problem about this move bishop to e6. In the continuation of this video, we'll see now this c6 continuation, but I wanted to show really how Magnus is brutalizing now this particular move bishop to e6. So here in the game, Magnus plays bishop to d3, normal development. We have knight to d7 and now f4, and you see now already a messed up position here for black. I'm not saying this is losing, but it's really unpleasant here to play the game from black's perspective. You have to play now some ideas of knight to b6, and look at this now with the move knight to f3, knight to e5. I think white could have really fun around the square. e5 would simply cement the position, would have, I think, a great space advantage. Has now a great activity with the dark square bishop, also with the light square bishop. The knight is on a good square. Rook to c1 will happen, controlling further the c file. So in my opinion, it's a great setup. I think black could face many positional problems. So let's go back. After move f4, you see Shakir Mamedjarov went into a wild line with the move h6, bishop to h4. We have now the move g5, h takes g5, h takes g5, bishop to g5, and Shakir Mamedjarov finally played now the move c6, but he lost the pawn, and Magnus Carlsen went simply queen to f3, knight to e2, and castle, even queenside, castle out of the potential attack, because Mamedjarov's idea was probably maybe to sacrifice one pawn, force maybe Magnus Carlsen to castle kingside, and then of course here Shakir Mamedjarov could maybe place his rooks on the g file, h file, and of course if white would have castled here on the kingside, then black has a dominant position. Black would probably destroy with the heavy artillery here white's castle king, but Magnus Carlsen sensed, of course, this idea. He castled out of this attack, has now a situation where he's up a pawn and has now a solid game. So in the continuation, Shakir Mamedjarov tried to force something out of this position. Magnus Carlsen retreated. We have queenside castling, knight to f4, and here Magnus tricked Shakir Mamedjarov into a wild tactical sequence. It seems so that the rook is hanging, but actually with the move knight to d5, knight takes d5, knight to d5, here the queen is hanging also. Queen to bishop to f3, knight to b6 comes with the check, knight takes b6. Here Magnus Carlsen takes the pawn on e7, bishop to d1, and now after move bishop to f5, first the check here in this particular position. Shakir Mamedjarov resigns. So let's go back. So in my opinion, very critical moment, and I really want you now to pay good attention, because many of these problems I think will happen to you if you're playing the Janowski variation. As I said, bishop to e6 is okay. You will not lose the game immediately because you played bishop to e6, but in my opinion, c6 is now a much better continuation, with the idea, as we said, b5, b5, knight to d7, knight to b6, and knight to c4. If you are bothered by this particular line, please check out our also Queen's Gambit decline studies in the exchange variation and the so-called positional line. We have talked about this idea in our positional line setups. Please, as I said, you should always watch the series combined. Not only does this video, we have talked about many of these positional ideas in our previous analysis. Let's see now what happens. White will probably go into this queen to c2 delaying move. Will eventually try this move bishop to d3, and is trying to play f3, e4, knight to e2, and similar stuff. So we have talked about this idea in our, as I said, Queen's Gambit declined, exchange variation, the positional line. Please check out also this video. I think these two videos watching combined is now very important. So now after move queen to c2, we're going to castle. Bishop to d3 of course hits the pawn on h7, so that's why we have to play h6, kicking with the bishop. White will try to stay with the bishop on the board, but now comes a very important move that I would recommend you here, is of course the move rook to e8. Further control of the e4, because white will try eventually maybe to break the position, will try to open the position with the move e4, and you want to be already there. You have to control now the e4 square. Now white continues with the normal plan. As I said, like in the positional variation, f3 e4 is now one of the huge tactical threats. So here in the continuation, now comes a very important move. We have talked about this idea many times, and I I introduce you now again this idea b5, as we said, knight to d7. We want to maybe go even with the queen to b6, get out of this annoying pin by the bishop against the knight, and then we're trying to maybe go bishop to b7, bishop to g4 is an opportunity. We have an opportunity maybe to go with the move b4. Many huge opportunities, I think, also here for black. The problem, look at this, if white castles too early now, if white plays now the move kingside castling, now there is a cool tactical shot. Bishop to h2 is here even an opportunity, because after king to h2, now we have this one, knight to g4, after king to g3, in order to stay connected to the bishop. Now we have g5, and guarantee you here you have a solid game. f3 is never an opportunity to kick away the knight from the square g4, because there's also then the weak square on e3. So really I think a very important line. Let's go back. After move b5, your opponent could try maybe the move h3. It's not allowing you this tactical shot with the move bishop to h2, but now you go just bishop to e6. Now you can play the move bishop to e6, because it's now a different story, because if f4 happens now, then we have bishop to d7 as a retreatment move. You don't have to worry, because still, of course, the pawn on e3 is now becoming a huge tactical problem. So here after move bishop to e6, now maybe your opponent will castle, and now you go just knight to d7, knight to b6, and then knight to c4. We have talked about this idea many times. Again, if you face this idea bishop to f4, trying to trap the bishop with the move f5, now you just go knight to b6, and I think you have solved all of your positional problems. f5, bishop to d7, again, the weak pawn on e3 is something that bothers white in continuation of the game. So if e4 happens in some occasions, then of course white is keeping the game with this isolated pawn on d4, and still we have opportunities to break the position with the move c5 ourselves. We can play rook to c8, targeting the queen maybe on the c file. So in my opinion, already in equal position here for black. So this is very important. So play, please, in this particular position c6 instead of bishop to e6 immediately, because if you play bishop to e6 too early, then we have seen the bishop gets exposed. We have always the opportunity to play bishop to e6 afterwards, but now very important, first fix the pawn structure. b5, knight to b6, knight to d7, knight to b6, knight to c4 are opportunities. Now white is going to a similar structure like in the positional line, but now we're playing castle, bishop to d3, h6, rook to e8, controlling e4, now b5, also very important move. b5, don't mess it up, very important idea in your structure, because you have always even the opportunity to kick away the knight with the move b4 if white tries to be aggressive here with the move e4. Then you have always b4 deflecting the knight and maybe capture the pawn on e4. So very important study I think we have seen in this Magnus Carlsen Shagrin Mamedjadov game. After move bishop to e6, Magnus went to this f4 line, knight to f3, and knight to e5 is always a huge positional setup that white can produce here. So you saw Mamedjadov got huge tactical problems. He went into a wild line, but it's nothing spectacular, because Magnus sensed, of course, that Shagrin Mamedjadov is building an attacking formation here on the king side, and castle simply out of the attack and went into a favorable middle game. So as I said, if you are facing this early idea with the move bishop to g5, when white is breaking this principle, when white is playing with the same piece twice. So let's go back. After our bishop to d6, bishop to g5, now recommend you just to go into this c6 line. So okay, I hope that we have solved now also this particular problem. This problem you'll face many times, I guarantee you. I played now a couple of times the Janowski variation, and I met this idea. White is playing bishop to f4, and then is playing bishop to g5, continues with the pin, and now I think this is a solid way to get out of this tactical mess. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the study. If you want to know more about the Janowski variation, but also more about some other Queen's Gambit decline possibilities, please check out our series from the beginning. As I said, this is a huge series. Try to search if there's something for you. If you have problems, maybe you should also check out our previous analysis, because many of these ideas we have explained previously, and maybe you're bothered still with with some other sidelines. So as I said, it's very important to watch all of this series in order to get a better understanding what's going on now, for instance, also in this particular variation. So here's the link again to our beautiful Queen's Gambit Decline playlist, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.